Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David.
And I'm Bash. And today we're going to be talking about an effective and fun modern deck that you can build without breaking the bank.
Exactly. Now, we have only one build rule, and that is all cards must be under $2 in price. Our usual build rule is under $1. That's for our EDH decks. For modern decks, because there's less cards, we can get away with under $2, and the decks come to around the same price. Also, if you like these videos, you want to see us make more, you want to help us out, want to consider chucking in a buck by going to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and helping us out over there. For as little as $1 a month, you really help out the show. Really appreciate it. So Bash, what deck are we going to be looking at today?
We're going to be looking at a black and green Elves deck.
Nice. And how we're going to be winning?
Go wide with a lot of Elves.
Seems easy enough. And what are the type of cards that we're going to need to make this deck work?
We're going to need 10 mana cards, 10 value, 10 draw, 12 finishers, and 18 lands, and of course a sideboard of around 15 cards.
Perfect. So let's have a look at what would the ideal turn progression be.
Ideally, on turn 1, we draw and are able to play an Elvish Mystic. Turn 2, Dwynen's Elite and Llanowar Elves. Turn 3, Imperious Perfect and Elvish Visionary. Turn 4, a Sylvan Messenger and a Dwynen's Elite. And then turn 5, Dwynen, Guiltleaf Dane, and Shaman of the Pack.
Yeah, and then it's pretty much game for our opponent.
Oh yeah.
Pretty sweet. All right, let's get started with the mana dorks. This first section contains all the low-costed elves, which are going to be ramping us into bigger stuff, and also make sure that we can have a lot of elves down on the early turns of the game. Now, we're going to start off with 4 copies of Elvish Mystic. Now, this one costs 1 green mana. It's a 1/1 Elf Druid and can tap for 1 green. So, of course, really nice. Ideally, we already discussed it. Comes in on the first turn, and it allows us to play more and more elves as we play more and more of these guys.
And then we have 4 copies of Llanowar Elves, also 1 green mana, an Elf Druid, which says tap to add 1 green mana to your mana pool.
Exactly the same. Yep, nice to have more of the same thing. And then we have Elves of Deep Shadow, also for a green. We've got 2 copies of this one. It's a 1/1 Elf Druid, big surprise. But this one taps for a green, not for a green, but taps for a black mana instead of a green mana. But it also deals 1 damage to us. And I may think, okay, wait, we don't like to take damage, but in the end, it doesn't really matter that much. And it allows us to have that extra black source of mana, which can be very handy later on in the game for, as we will see, our other cards. So now let's have a look at the value cards.
So in the value cards, we start off with 2 copies of Essence Warden. For 1 green, we get a 1/1 elf, which states whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain life. You gain 1 life. So this is really handy because it's not only our own creatures, but it's also our opponent's creatures. So this guarantees, or helps guarantee in any case, that we always have a good amount of life coming in, probably more than our opponent does.
Yeah, exactly. Also, what's nice about it is because it only costs 1 green mana, we can bring it down really early in the game, so we start getting value from it as soon as possible. And what this deck also likes is to just have a lot of elves on the battlefield. Just having this guy, even without all the life gain, it's nice to be able to make sure that turn 4, turn 5, we're able to have so many more 1-drops that we can play throughout the game and make sure we have a lot of elves. Next up, we have Elvish Visionary. You got 4 copies of this one. It costs 1 and a green. We get a 1/1 Elf Shaman. Now, when this guy enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Now, it may seem very innocuous, very unimpressive, but what this deck wants to do is to play as many elves as possible, and we need to refill our hand as soon as possible, make sure that we have more elves in our hand and we can play those. And of course, the mana dorks give us the extra mana so we can play more cards. So it's so important to be able to get an elf body, and be able to refill our hand again. So Elvish Visionary is a crucial card in this deck.
Yeah, card draw is key. And then we have 4 copies of Dwynen's Elite for 1 mana and a green, another elf creature, 2/2 this time, which states when Dwynen's Elite enters the battlefield, if you control another elf, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So this helps us just fill up that board with a lot of elf tokens to just amass that elf army that we want to get up as quickly as going.
Yeah, exactly. Think about how many 1-drops we have in this deck. So almost guaranteed on turn 2 when we play this, we're gonna have those 3 elves already on turn 2, which is pretty sweet. Those are the value cards. Let's have a look at some draw. As you said, draw is key. For draw, we're going to start with 4 copies of Lead the Stampede. Now, for 2 and a green, we get a sorcery. It allows us to look at the top 5 cards of our library, reveal any number of creature cards from among them, put those into our hand, and put the rest at the bottom of our library in any order. So what's really good is that this deck is actually really heavy on the creatures. It's an Elves deck, so we like to put a lot of creatures in there. And Lead the Stampede allows us to draw almost we get about 4 to sometimes even 5 creatures out of this, which is insane. And even 3 is not bad at all, because remember, all these creatures that are in the deck are all really low mana costed. So once we play this, we refill our hand, and with all the mana dorks we have, we can just play all of them again. So 4 copies of this is really what you want in this kind of a deck.
Right. And then we have Eldritch Evolution for 1 mana and 2 green. It's a sorcery which states, as an additional cost to cast Eldritch Evolution, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library and exile Eldritch Evolution. So as opposed to the card before, we have this one in here to find a specific card. So card searching as opposed to card draw. One of our key finishers, which will be coming up later, Shaman of the Pack.
Yeah. What's really important to remember is that Shaman of the Pack, well, we're going to look at it in a second, but it's 3 mana, we can already tell you, and it means with Eldritch Evolution we can sacrifice any of our mana dorks or Essence Warden, any of our 1-drops, and then we can go get that special card. So it's almost guaranteed that whenever we have the 3 mana to play this, we can go search for that Shaman of the Pack. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Sylvan Messenger for 3 and a green. So for 4 mana, we get a 2/2 elf with trample. Now, okay, the fact that it's got trample, not that interesting. And you may think, okay, 4 mana for a 2/2 elf is pretty steep, but it has a special ability. When Sylvan Messenger enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all elf cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. So it's kind of like a Lead the Stampede, 1 card less, but it also comes in with a 2/2 body of its own. So it's a nice little draw, and it's got a nice little another elf on the battlefield to help us out. Very nice. Those are the draw cards. Let's have a look at how we're going to finish this game.
So, on to the finishers. We have 4 copies of Imperious Perfect. For 2 and a green, you get an Elf Warrior 2/2, which states other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. It also has the ability for 1 green, tap, and put a 1/1 green Elf Warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So this second ability isn't the primary use of this card. You really want it for the +1/+1 aspect. You can use it, of course, to get an extra token. If you happen to have the extra mana and you want to spend it, I mean, by all means. But yeah, not the most efficient use of your mana. Most of the time you want to be doing other things.
Exactly. And actually just having a Lord for 3 mana is pretty efficient already.
Yeah.
Next, speaking of Lords, we've got Dwynnin Guiltleaf Dane for 2 and 2 greens. So for 4 mana, we've got a 3/4 Elf Warrior. Now remember, we've got 2 copies of this. Why? Because this creature is legendary, which means we can only have 1 of these on the battlefield at any given point in time. She's also got Reach, which could come in handy. More importantly, though, other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. So the same as with the Imperious Perfect, this is a card we got in there to pump up all our elves and to make sure that we can also attack with a force that's a little bit more impressive than just 1/1 mana dorks. Additionally, when this creature attacks, gain 1 life for each attacking elf you control. We've got lots of elves, we're going to be attacking, and that means that we can put ourselves out of reach of those really aggressive decks that are going to be trying to race us. It's always nice.
Yep. Then we have 4 copies of Shaman of the Pack for 1, a black and a green. We have an Elf Shaman 3/2, which states when Shaman of the Pack enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So we've amassed a whole bunch of elves and tokens, searched for this card, or we're lucky enough to have it in our hand. We play it and we finish our opponent off, breaking through any barriers, normal defenses that they may have, and hitting them directly.
Yeah, it is a thing of beauty. This is pretty much what this deck is built around. Shaman of the Pack is the inspiration for this deck. As it says, it's a finisher, and it really does exactly that. And even if it doesn't finish off our opponent, and we do have a bunch of tokens, and then next turn we can attack with this guy as well. So 3/2 might be a 4/3. It's nothing to sniff at, so it's a thing of beauty when you pull it. Then we go on to the last one of the finishers, and that is Decimator of the Provinces. For a whopping 10 mana, we get a nice little Eldrazi, a 7/7 with trample and haste. Now you may think, okay, I know we got a lot of mana dorks, but 10 mana, we're never going to cast that. That is true, it is too much, but that is because it also has the Emerge ability, which means that we can pay 6 mana and an additional 3 mana. So 9 mana we can pay additionally instead of paying the 10 converted mana cost. And then we can also sacrifice a creature and then subtract the cost of that creature's converted mana cost from the cost of this guy. So that means that if we play, for example, before we had a Sylvan Messenger, which drew us a lot of cards, and then later we can sacrifice that thing, and then we only have to pay 5 mana, and then we get a 7/7 trample haste, which also till the end of the turn gives all our creatures +2/+2 and trample till the end of turn. So it is really beautiful to give that to our opponents. They're not expecting that. You had a big hasty trampler which we can beat with, and also all our mana dorks will all be big and they can just go in and attack as well and finish off our opponent. Those are the finisher cards. All that's left to do is to look at the lands.
So, as we said earlier, we have 18 lands. We have 4 swamps, 10 forests, and 4 Llanowar wastes, which state tap, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or tap and add a green or a black mana to your mana pool. However, you will deal 1 damage to yourself if you do.
Totally worth it. I think, so we do need that that black source for Shaman of the Pack.
Yep.
So it's good to have that ability in there.
And we have enough ways to get life back, so something you can lose.
Exactly, not a problem. All right, let's have a look at the sideboard. To start out with our sideboard cards, we have an extra copy of Eldritch Evolution. Now, we've already looked at that one, so I'm not going to go into it, but sometimes we may be across an opponent where we really need to search for the Shaman of the Pack a little bit earlier, and then having an extra copy of Eldritch Evolution allows us to do that.
Yeah, can be very useful. Next up, then, we have 4 copies of Wrap in Vigor. For 1 colorless and a green, it's an instant which states regenerate each creature you control. It's there for board wipes.
Yeah, usually in our second game, there's going to be a lot of decks that are going to want to play those deal 2 damage to all creatures, destroy all creatures, all that kind of stuff. And Wrap in Vigor makes sure that our strategy of going wide does not get hampered by those kind of cards.
Yep.
Then we have Reclamation Sage for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, we get a 2/1 Elf Shaman. So it's nice, this little Shaman guy extra. When this guy enters the battlefield, we're going to be able to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Handy for those artifact strategies. Sometimes you may have affinity or something like that. And this allows us to be able to continue putting elf bodies on the battlefield, but also getting rid of those key cards that they may require.
Yep. Then we have 2 copies of Loaming Shaman. For 2 and a green, it's a Centaur Shaman, not an elf. 3/2, which states, when Loaming Shaman enters the battlefield, target player shuffles any number of target cards from his or her graveyard into his or her library. Very handy against graveyard strategy.
Exactly. You're going to have those people that dredge or start to put all their big fatties into the graveyard to reanimate them, and Loaming Shaman makes sure that they're not going to be able to get extra value from that. Narnam Renegade is next. For a single green, we've got a 1/2 Elf Warrior with Death Touch. It's also got Revolt, which means this guy enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter if a permanent we control left the battlefield this turn. Not very relevant. The reason why this is in there, some decks may come with really big fatties, land creatures not flying, for example. Let's say a creature that may be a 4/5 or a 5/5 really early on in the game, but if it doesn't have evasion, putting in some Narnam Renegades into your deck can really hamper our opponent's ability to attack into us properly, because the Death Touch and of course the fact that it's an elf doesn't hamper our strategy in any way. So it's nice to have this guy in there for people who just like playing fatties.
Yep. Then we've got 2 copies of Profane Command. For X and 2 black, it's a sorcery, very powerful and versatile card, which has multiple options. One of those options is target player loses X life, and the next is return target creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target creature gets -X/-X until the end of the turn, or up to X target creatures gain fear until the end of the turn. So multiple uses for these options. For the last one, giving your creatures fear allows them to get through and not be blocked. Target creature gets -X/-X. We can get rid of something that's very bothersome. Hit our opponent straight with just some life that we have mana for. We have a lot of elves that can give us some extra mana, so we can finish an opponent off if we really need to get through. And returning something with certain converted mana cost from the graveyard, always handy.
Yeah, the Shaman of the Pack coming in again is nothing to
Exactly.
sniff at. Absolutely. Then we go to the last of the sideboard cards. That's 2 copies of Essence Warden. We already have 2 copies, so there may be times when we're going against a very aggressive strategy. Somebody's really trying to race us, and our initial 2 copies of Essence Warden is not enough. Then we just chuck in these other 2 as well. We're going to make sure we got 4 copies in the deck. And if a couple of these come and hit the battlefield, and they start playing their creatures, and we're playing loads and loads of creatures, we're going to get so far ahead that they won't be able to race us. They won't be able to burn us out anymore. And then in the long run, with all our card draw, we're just going to have a more massive army and then crush them. So that is the sideboard. Let's have a look at the conclusion.
So, in conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. Why? Well, if you like elves, it's got a lot of elves. Like a lot of elves. And your opponent thinks you're just amassing elves and you're just trying to overrun them, but suddenly you come with a Shaman of the Pack and you hit them right in the face. The look on their face is priceless. So this deck is a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. I like how it's really, as you said, it's a combination of 2 things of both going wide with a lot of small creatures. It's also you shoot people straight to the face with the Shaman in the Pact, or with the Profane Command, for example.
One punch.
Yeah, one punch elf. Yeah, and what's also cool is that it's also got ways to pump your elves, so to make sure that those mana dorks at the beginning of the game, those 1/1 tokens, they do become serious threats later on in the game. So it's kind of got those 3 strategies going for it. And of course, a sideboard, make sure that should somebody say, oh, I'm going to get that special card to make sure that you can't do that, we've got a counter for that as well to make sure that we can still do that, or use one of our 3 strategies to be more efficient in killing our opponent. So that is a lot of fun, and it's also quite affordable, right?
Yep, it's just under $37.
Yeah, that's including all the lands, all the cards, sideboard, everything, which is a pretty decent modern deck for that price. Also, now we'd like to remind you guys that we have a Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks. You can check out some exclusive content over there for as little as $1 a month. You can help us out. I would really appreciate it very much. Also, join us on Facebook and on Twitter at budgetmtgdecks. And since recently we have an Instagram page, you can go check out some pictures that we take when we're, for example, playing a game, doing play testing. So you can check that out over on our Instagram page. Also, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube for the most powerful decks and advice everyone can afford. And if you do, don't forget to hit the little bell button so you get a notification whenever a new video comes out. If you don't hit that little bell button, you won't get notified. So make sure you press that. Thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Bash.
And this was Budget MTG Decks.